What is going on, you guys? It's your girl Diana, back at you with another YouTube video. A couple of months back, I made a video where I ranked what I thought were the worst 3D models in the newer mainline Pokemon games. And I'm happy to report that they have fixed a couple of them in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. However, there also appears to be some leaked animations that people are not happy about. So in today's video, I wanted to go over all of the 3D models that were fixed and also see what's causing such an uproar on Twitter. So if you are interested in seeing the latest updates on the 3D models in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, then just keep on watching. And if you're new here, make sure that you subscribe because it helps you grow out. And if you'd like another way to support the channel, please feel free to check out the merch store. There is a link down below in the description that takes you to not only my merch store, but also all of my other socials so you can keep up with what I'm doing on a daily basis. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of the newest 3D models. So let's go ahead and start off with some of the more positive changes that they've made to the 3D models since Pokemon Sword and Shield, leading off with none other than Charizard. So as you can see, courtesy of Cerebi here, Charizard's previous 3D model just kind of had this lifeless expression and he kind of just hovered there, flapping his wings occasionally, and just looked really awkward, just kind of like dead in space. Which granted, it could look worse. However, most people were not a fan of this animation. But lucky for us, they did update Charizard's 3D model in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So I have Charizard here at the front of my party. I'm gonna go ahead and send him out. And as you can see, Charizard does still kind of fly around, but however, he has a lot more movement to him. His face looks a lot more aggressive. And the best part, as you can see, he lands and he stands just like the Charizard in the actual anime that you would see. And he looks a lot more menacing. So this is definitely one of the biggest and best updates that they've made. I think he looks so cool now, especially this shiny Charizard. We love to see him. And he just moves a lot more fluidly. He's not just awkwardly flying next to you as he would in the previous 3D models. So I thought that this was a great update to Charizard's 3D model. Another Pokemon that people really didn't like the 3D model for was Typhlosion. As you can see here, once again, courtesy of Cerebi, when Typhlosion was just in its idle stance, it didn't have any of its flames that it usually has around its neck. So he just kind of looks like a weasel that needs to sneeze, in my opinion. However, thanks to some data miners, I am using Zeep's photo here on Twitter, we can now see that they have updated Typhlosion's idle stance to have his signature flames around his neck, so he actually looks like a Typhlosion now. It does also look like they've slightly updated its facial features, just because if we go back to its original sprite, we can see that it looks a lot less angular and a lot less like edgy and just looks a little bit more soft overall, which gives it that, you know, I need to sneeze face. Whereas here, he kind of looks like he's ready for business. And obviously, like I said, this Pokemon is not actually in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet yet. However, it is coded into the game, so that is how these data miners were able to see what these sprites are actually going to look like when we do have the DLC introduced in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. It is kind of unfortunate that there is a couple of Pokemon whose 3D models did not get updated in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. For example, Salamence here just stays floating like he did in the previous generations, which is always a little bit disappointing because he does still look pretty awkward. As you can see, if you're not moving and he just kind of floats next to you, something about it is just off-putting to me. Like, I don't think it looks horrible, but I think it looks awkward. However, at least he does flap his wings, so it looks like he's actually meant to be flying, but I just think that it would look a lot better if he was standing on the ground when I wasn't moving, just like Charizard was. He does land occasionally, which when he does do that, it looks a lot better. So I just wish that he would land all the time. But like I said, I don't think it looks like horrible or anything. I think he looks cool. He would just look cooler if he landed. And since we're on the topic of Salamence, I did want to also mention Roaring Moon, which is Salamance's paradox form. As you can see, he quite literally hardly moves his wings and he just really looks awkward, just kind of hanging there in dead space. However, when you encounter Roaring Moon in the cave where you can find him in Area 0, he's usually on the floor just walking around. And I think he looks a lot better than whatever is happening right here because he literally looks like a ghost that's haunting me. So for me personally, I am of the opinion that these kind of like floating, hovering, flying animations do look really awkward, especially when you are standing still and not moving, and that they would look a lot better if they just landed and were on the floor with me. However, despite some of the updates that they have or have not made to the 3D models, this is actually not what's causing the biggest controversy within the Pokemon community. It's actually the updates to some of the signature moves of some of the Pokemon that are set to be added to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in the near future. One of the biggest ones ones being Cinderace, which Cinderace will actually be available early before the Pokemon Home Connection and the DLC, with the upcoming Black Crystal Terra raids featuring Cinderace. And as we know from Pokemon Sword and Shield, Cinderace's signature move was Pyro Ball, which thanks to Soul Silver art, we actually have a side-by-side comparison of what this animation looked like in Sword and Shield compared to what they're supposed to look like in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So as we can see here in Pokemon Sword and Shield, this animation was actually quite elaborate for Pyro Ball, which it was actually one of my favorite animations of that game. However, in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, what data miners have found is that this is what the updated animation is supposed to look like. So instead of Cinderace going through the elaborate footwork that it had in the previous animation, it's just kind of kicking the ball straight on. Kind of like I used to when I used to play soccer and didn't care at soccer practice and would just kick the ball without trying. So in the eyes of some people, this is a huge downgrade from the elaborate animation that we got when Cinderace was first introduced into the Pokemon games, which I would have to agree. I love the way that the animation used to look in Pokemon Sword and Shield. And the same can be said for Decidueye's signature move, Spirit Shackle, which as you can see here, before Decidueye used to pull back an arrow and we would then be able to see multiple arrows hitting the opponent. However, in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as we can see in this video here, that animation is just completely gone and the arrows quite literally appear out of nowhere, which personally I think this looks kind of awkward now because why is there arrows just coming out of thin air? And so as much as I love this game, I'm 1000% not one of the people that's going to complain about like all of the glitches and things because I think that this is a super fun game. I do think that these updated animations are a little bit of a letdown, which some people are saying that the reason for the moves not being as elaborate is because you are able to pan around the entire battle in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet since you do have a panoramic camera. So therefore they had to simplify some of the animations so that it would work with the updated camera settings. And it looks like Decidueye and Cinderace are actually not the only ones that fell victim to these updated animations. We can see here for Zacian's signature move, Behemoth Blade, it used to have a very elaborate animation as well. However, now in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as you can see, we just get a lot more of a simplified version of what we used to get in Pokemon Sword and Shield. I will say, however, that the Zacian one was definitely not as big of a downgrade as it was for Decidueye and Cinderace. So as much as I love these games and thoroughly enjoy them, I do wish that they would have kept a little bit more originality for these moves, especially since these are the signature moves of very popular Pokemon. I definitely understand needing to simplify them due to the new mechanics of the game, so I do see both sides of the coin, but it does still leave me a little bit disappointed. But of course, this is all just 100% my opinion, and I would love to hear what you guys think down below in the comments. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Love you guys. Bye!